Forgive me. Goes. All right. So the master class is out of the rat race and into a more beautiful world. Um, and what we're going to be doing tonight, we'll do a check-in in a moment. Then I want to talk about, what do I mean by the rat race? What do we mean when we talk about a more beautiful world? I want to talk about some models for leaving the rat race, particularly energetic models. And then I want to show you a roadmap of the journey, the way I conceive it. Then I've got a few like verbs and numbers. You'll see when we get to that. I'll tell you a little bit about what I did to build my ramp out. And then at the very end, hopefully I'll leave 5 minutes, but maybe less. I'll just talk briefly about the course that's starting in 2 weeks. And then we'll have a closing. And if all goes well, it'll be 9 o'clock our time, 10 o'clock on the East Coast, and so on. We've got folks coming from California, as far as I know, and also mountains. So it's a good group. And I just want to be sure. Okay, great. Okay. And I wanted to start um, with the second half of a poem by Mary Oliver. And you probably have heard this poem before. I have to tell you, it's been the first part she's talking about, who made the black bear and the grasshopper, this grasshopper, the one right in front of me, chewing with his teeth side to side instead of top to bottom. And then she goes on to say, I don't know exactly what a prayer is. I do know how to pay attention, how to fall down into the grass, how to kneel down in the grass, how to be idle and blessed, how to stroll through the fields, which is what I've been doing all day. Tell me, what else should I have done? Doesn't everything die at last and too soon? Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? And I will tell you what, I'm someone for whom that third line from the last, I live with that. For some reason, have always been very aware that life has a time stamp on it, and boy, do I want to get the most out of it that I can. And I think I've had a pretty great life, and sometimes people ask me, actually, I just had a couple of teachers say to me, when we grow up, Katie, we want to be you. And I said, well, it just so happens I'm running a course. If you want to do the things I'm doing, here you go. This is the course for it. All right. So I want to invite you. I'm going to put you into breakout rooms in a moment. I want to invite you with your partner to talk about why you're here on whatever level you want to talk about it. It can be very literally right here, right now. You can go cosmic with it if you want. And then I'd like you also to talk with your partner about what is a successful life. Okay? So now my job is to get you into breakout rooms. So let me do that. Welcome, Farah. All right. So I will send these little reminders into you, but first just, you'll introduce yourself. Why are you here? And then the other is, what do you think a successful life is? Um, I'm going to give you about you know, 3 minutes each per question. Welcome, Shannon. Just so you know. All right. So let's see if I can get my breakout rooms going. We're going to have, how many of us are there? There are 4. So we're going to have 8 breakout rooms. We're going to assign automatically. We're going to create. Okay. So you'll get, I'm going to give you about 12 minutes, somewhere around 12 minutes for this whole thing. So 3 minutes each, talk about why are you here? Each of you 3 minutes. And then what is a successful life? Each of you 3 minutes. Okay. And what I'll do is I'll send a note when it's time to switch to the next partner and then the next question. Okay. All right. And enjoy. What came up? What showed up for you? What maybe surprised you or intrigued you about your conversations?
I'll go.
Great. Go, Karen.
I met Michelle, and I don't know if you meant to pair us together, but we thought you did.
No, I know
Of
it's
course, she put us
random.
together.
Because we are in such similar places in our lives, and we've done similar work, and we're kind of in that same place in life where we're considering what's next.
Yeah, it is actually interesting. Some of the grouping, random is fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah, the fact that we come from the nonprofit world,
Similar
look,
age.
yeah, yeah. So,
Yep. Similar position. Oh yeah, I
hmm
see it
hmm
all.
hmm
Okay. Anyone else want to share, just do a share back of what surprised you?
I think I don't know if it was such a surprise, but one word that came up a lot for us was more balance.
Mhm.
Because we are working and some of us have to work because of money.
Mhm.
Hopefully doing what we want to do and like to do, but not that it consumes us so much that we, are exhausted at the end of the day. So finding more of a balance.
Yeah. Yeah. And actually, I would say also on that topic, just the idea of what is balance, if we think about it kind of inside the context of, if you will, the rat race versus outside of it. So just let's play with that idea of balance. I would love to have a little more dialogue about that. So we'll keep it alive. Anyone else before we move on? All right. Well, we're gonna carry on then, my friends. Plenty to keep us busy. Okay, so I want to take us and I want to talk about what the rat race. Now, I'm going to tell you this. When I was writing this, I was like, oh my gosh, there's so much I could say about what the rat race is. So let's just imagine that this is a first go at what is the rat race rather than some, absolute final word on it. Um, so what I think about when I think about the rat race is that the rhythm and the rules are made by humans. One of the women I worked with once talked about humans as popsicle heads, like we're just all up here. You know what I mean? In fact, I just had a client the other day. He's like, "Oh yeah, it's I guess I'm remembering that I have a body." I said, "Yeah, and if you turned it around, you could say your body has a head, right?" And we never think about it that way. It's like the head has the body, not the body has the head, right? So we really are up here. And then this construct, I'll challenge you to try to break the concept of the 7-day week, the 40-hour workday, and the idea of weekends. Okay. Because when you're out of the rat race, as I have been, it's like, well, I shouldn't be working in the evening. That's one rule. And I shouldn't be working on the weekends, but I should be working during the day. And if I'm not working during the day, then that's kind of weird, right? It's so embedded in our consciousness that this is the way life is that we don't even think about it. And even me, after 8 years of being out, now I'm on the peripheries of it, of course, because I work in kind of with schools and with people who are still very much involved in it. But nonetheless, that idea of a flexible workday is actually quite a difficult one to break. So survival of the fittest, that is also the rat race. It's competitive, it's kind of egocentric, it's about winners and losers. It's interesting, this idea of short-term focus. I've been thinking a lot about that since I wrote it in here. The short-term focus is really because we're really kept so busy, we can hardly look at the long term. There just isn't a lot of time for it. And we're kind of dealing with things typically as they come up in this like really urgent manner. And in any case, and that, ultimately we kind of live in this reptilian fear-based place because it's actually not natural to us. This kind of structure around which the rat race is built. So, and then I will say, particular to the rat race as a capitalist model. Now, it's not always true, but it was certainly here in the States we deal with this. And it's just a dominant mindset. In fact, putting everything in an economic model is just part, we turn everything into capital or resources or, right? We kind of have turned our mind over to the idea that everything can and should be defined that way. Um, and what I found, and certainly this was for me, overwhelm and distraction. But what I also found in the rat race is there was a lot of consumption. Frankly, because I was tired most of the time. I was eating out more, grabbing a coffee on the go, shopping for, Netflix, for some reason, all of those I was doing more of than I do when I'm out of the rat race. And so essentially what I was thinking about is it's like we find our place and purpose inside the societal construct. I want to just talk for a moment about the societal construct. Every society has one. I'm not suggesting that it's, some evil scheme that we have the rat race. It's not true. Actually, in the larger context, the rat race, which is a particular kind of model based on a meritocracy, is innovative over what some models that have come before. It's just that what happens is at a certain point, the model or the structure becomes kind of overtakes the needs of the people for whom it was built. Okay, and I feel like that's kind of where we're going. And it's not bad. What it kind of means is we're evolving past needing this. Okay, and the question is then what's next? And we can all feel it because we're evolving past it, and it's kind of obviously it's almost like in the way of our evolution. But I think growth really is that way. Okay. So now I'll say what's the more beautiful world? I'm going to add a few to this as we go. But basically, the more beautiful world follows natural cycles. There's more being and feeling. There's a connection to the larger cosmos. One of the other images I had for these two was this old medieval village scene where there's like the castle, and then outside of it, there are the fields and the workers in the fields. And I was thinking, we've kind of like um, somehow we've gotten turned our whole attention that the castle is the reality, that the city is the reality, that the structures are the reality, and the natural cycles are kind of left outside. So when we step out of the rat race, we do actually encounter more of the natural larger cycles, including the cosmos, but also seasons and also just the cycles of our own body, because we actually have time to be present and reflect on them. We also tend to take a larger view of things. I do really feel that the more beautiful world is a focus on people and planet, and we'll talk about that a little more as we go. Um, Once you're out, right? It's funny. Inside of the rat race, our belonging comes a lot through our job and the work that we do. And when we step out of it, actually, we have to build a new belonging network, and that is one of the reasons why I actually feel like this work is so important because we're creating basically a village outside of the rat race. That's really what's happening. And ultimately, this kind of feeling of belonging connection actually soothes our reptilian brain. So we get out of fight, flight, freeze as often. Now, it will also trigger, by the way, it'll trigger the reptilian brain for other reasons, which is that we're outside of this thing where we're supposed to belong to. That's who we're like that. There was known. I mean, one of the things the rat race gives us is this idea of a kind of certainty and a kind of rightness and a right way to do things and a wrong way to do things. And then we want that on some level, no matter how countercultural we are, we want to belong to something bigger than us because it's part of our safety. So when we step out of it, I'm not going to say there isn't plenty of charge for the nervous system to deal with. There is, but it's different. And we have more time, space, and choice to work with it. And so one of the great gifts of humanity, in fact, I think one of the things that really sets us apart is a particular kind of creativity that's possible that I think really gets suppressed when we're in this driven culture, right? When we're kind of kept so busy that we really can't stop and do the bigger work of being creative, developing and sharing our gifts. And this last piece I'll say, here's the thing. When you step out of the rat race and you step into this larger fabric, that in some ways it's hard to even believe it's there. It feels a little bit like a free fall for the first many months as people know who've gone out of it. What eventually happens is you start to feel yourself literally inside of something much, much larger that is emergent. And the more we are out of the rat race and in kind of engaging in this way, the more actually mystery and magic shows up. And one of these days, I'll just do a talk on all the magical things that have happened to me since I left the rat race. It's some of you already know them. It's truly, I'm kind of a pragmatic gal in a lot of ways, and it's kind of outside what you can think of. And a few of my clients recently have told me of some magical things that happened outside of the rat race. So I know it happens to other folks too. So I really believe being in the more beautiful world creates clarity, engagement, joy, ease, and satisfaction. Because what's going on is we find our place and purpose in the larger context of life, which actually has always been the larger context. It's not just now that it's the larger context. It actually is the larger context of our existence. And there's something much more stable because that larger context is much, much bigger than humanity. Okay, so it's not as kind of there are less vicissitudes. I mean, there's plenty of excitement, don't get me wrong. So I just want to acknowledge someone named Charles Eisenstein. If you don't know of him already, he's a wonderful kind of outside the rat race thinker and philosopher. And he wrote a book years ago that from which I've kind of borrowed a piece of it for the title of this course, right? Out of the rat race and into a more beautiful world. His book's called The More Beautiful World Our Hearts Know Is Possible. And there really was like probably 3 or 4 years, right? I couldn't even say that name without like bursting into tears because it's such a beautiful title. And he talks about the space between, okay, and really the space between stories. So in between the old and the new, there is an empty space. It's a time when the lessons and learnings of the old story are integrated. Only when that work has been done is the old story really complete. Then there is nothing, the pregnant emptiness from which all being arises. Returning to essence, we regain the ability to act from essence. Returning to the space between stories, we can choose from freedom and not from habit. Okay, and in some ways, that's where we're going. And it's pretty fantastic, and it's got its own little challenges. So I wanted to just take a minute here to share just a little bit about my story. So let me pull out of this for a minute, just so you have some context. Why am I teaching about this? Uh, and the truth is, I never really wanted to go into the rat race in the first place. I remember when I was young, I was like, I'm never going to get a full-time job. Like I never wanted to. And then lo and behold, late in my 20s, I found myself a single mother and there really wasn't a choice. And I went in fact, I went into Montessori education. Originally, I was going to go in, get my certification and go back to Greece and open a school. So I was definitely out of the rat race all the time. But then I was pregnant. That's a whole other exciting story. And I was off to the races with my Montessori career. And every place that I went, I worked in Minnesota and then I went to California and I came back to Minnesota. I was always negotiating. When I was negotiating contracts, I was always negotiating for the maximum amount of time off that I could possibly get because I really, really, really wanted my freedom, to travel, to have time with my daughter, etc. So in 2008, I moved back to Minnesota from California. I took a job as a assistant professor at St. Catherine University in the Montessori department. And I bought a house with my then husband, and we planned to buy a farm. And right at that moment, I had just taken my permaculture design certification. And I was all ready. I mean, I just wanted to be on the farm. I just could hardly stand it. And it's probably the first moment I thought, I got to get out of this thing. This is definitely not working for me. And we're all set. Our plan was to do it. We bought the house in the city. We're going to buy the plant. And then 2009 hit and the recession, and he lost his job. And it's like, that was the end of the farm dream for me. And as the primary wage earner, some years later, with him still without a job, I finally realized I had to make more money than St. Kate's was paying me. And I ended up moving to North Carolina and taking a job as a program director at a Montessori school. And I was really back in the rat race. I mean, it was like super intense, right into a leadership position at a school I didn't know. And, to be honest with it, anyways, after a series of, let's say, very interesting events, I had my first launch out of the rat race. I left that position and I began consulting with a single school. 1 week a month is all I worked and 3 weeks off. And I was like, is this allowed? I really remember thinking, like, is this actually allowed? And I could afford it because they were paying me reasonably at the time. I had a partner and who was earning some income, and so I spent about a year like that, and I really felt like I was just cheating the system the whole time. And then I got another school that hired me this time. So I was working with it in North Carolina with a school with Salt Lake City, and then another school in St. Paul, Minnesota hired me to be their pedagogical consultant. And I was working two weeks a month, and that really felt like quite a bit more. And I was traveling. Well, anyways, long story short, I, I got a taste for what was possible there. But one of the schools wanted to hire me full time, and I wanted to move back to Minnesota. And so I took the job as the pedagogical director of Great River School. And I was there for 2 years. And literally within the first month of taking the job, I realized, oh, no, 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 no. I'm like, this is definitely not what I want. This is not working. And I began to plan my exit. And one of the ways that it happened is I happened as a part of my job to take a course as for professional coaching. And as soon as I was in that program, I was like, oh my gosh, this is my life. This is what I want to do. And so it took me 2 years at that point. The whole exit took me 10 years, but at the point where I finally knew what I wanted to do, it took me 2 years from that moment to actually the end of working full time. And I had a plan, I had a ramp, and I worked my plan, and it did work. And that's what I want to share with you today. So, one thing I'll say is, boy, does it help to be in alignment with the thing that you want to do. Okay. So, in some ways, that was key because then not only was it in alignment internally with me and all my parts, but things start to kind of happen around me in a magical way. And I'll tell you the funniest thing is, as soon as I quit my job, so I saved $20,000. I started two other jobs. I started consulting with the school nationally, and then I also started working with some leadership coach clients. And as soon as I took my job, I was out walking by Lake Nokomis here. And, forgive me again, I'll tell you, I hear things, and I heard a voice say in my head, you may not advertise. And I was like, scary, like, okay, sure. For 8 years, I never had to advertise. This course is the first time I've ever actively advertised for anything. So all I'm saying, what I mean about alignment is something happens when we get into alignment that there is a kind of a flow that we enter in. And so part of it is, how do we get there? Okay. And so I definitely want to talk a bit about that today, but to me, that's part of the trick of it all. Okay, so let's get back in here. Take you a little deeper into the process. Okay, so for some reason it won't. Okay, here we go. Okay. Sure, there's a smoother way, but here we go. So I have a question for you that I'm going to send you back into probably a new mix of groups. What have you glimpsed of this more beautiful world that we're kind of playing with in this course? There's a reason you're here. You're not just here because you quote want to get out of the rat race. Actually, there's something else that is the positive thing that you're kind of aiming toward. So I'd like you to go into your group and talk about that. And then I want to also have you talk, and I'll send these into the chat again. What do you think it's going to take to evade or avoid or get out of the rat? Like, what do you think it's going to take to actually do that or to stay out or once you get out to stay out? Okay, I want you to just play with what those are for you. Okay. And, oops, there we go. Be bad if I ended our program right now. All right, so let me recreate. We're going to go to 9 groups. Okay, folks, in you go, and I will have you come. So you have 2 questions. I'm going to give you about 5 minutes each total. So in about 10 minutes, I'll have you come back. Okay, Tony, I'm mixing the groups all up again, so everyone's going to a new place. Here we go. Who knows what magic will happen this time? All right, see you in 10 minutes. Hi, Farah.
Hi.
Does my skin look great?
Yeah. Your eyebrows.
I know, thank you.
Yes, yes.
Farah is
And
my esthetician, so
I am.
you can
That's
admire my skin. All right, welcome back, everyone. Okay, so how about just I'd love
I'd
to
love
hear
to.
a few snapshots because I was realizing I'm like so curious what you're saying. So what do you think? Both of them are interesting, of course. What glimpse have you gotten of the more beautiful world, and how do you think you're going to evade the rat race? No one knows.
I'll share.
Thanks, Natalie.
Yeah, I think by networking with each other
Mhm.
and learning about different resources and different opportunities, that we're going to help each other get get out of the rat race.
Mhm. Exactly. I totally agree. That's that bigger web that's like invisible inside the rat race. And once you get out, you're like, I gotta have people. I've got to be with people. Like, it has to be, it's not just going to be me and the grass out there, as beautiful as it is. Yeah, what else?
I found that there was, we kind of have this, I mean, part of it is a reality of finances, right? And living. But I also sort of always heard, oh, you got to have $1 million before you retire, and if that may not happen, it's probably not going to happen for me, so does that mean I just work forever? I mean, so I think trying to just a new way of how you're living, simpler, with community, I was talking with Allison. We were talking about sort of communal village type of stuff, cooperatives or whatever it might be. But just kind of rethinking that because I had mentioned that when I traveled to places that were extreme poverty and met families, they were fairly happy. I mean, they took me in like a lost son, and they're not going to have $1 million, So that was a thing for me. So.
Yeah. Actually, I'm glad you brought that up, Bruce, because there is this illusion that poverty means unhappiness. That's one of the rat race mentalities. I'm not suggesting that I know the answer to that for sure, but I can tell you it is not a one-for-one correspondence at all. In fact, I think wealth actually makes quite a bit of unhappiness. So, yeah. And there's the generosity too. Yeah, Joan, go.
Yeah, it's a community makes happiness, I would say. And that's really lacking in the US, at least. That's I mean, because it's a whole I don't think most Americans even realize how much they're they're brainwashed into thinking they must buy stuff, and to fulfill their needs, they buy products, and they're isolated from other people and dependent on buying things rather than on other people, a community.
That's right.
So
That's right. Or at least buying things as a surrogate for the real wealth. Yeah.
mm.
Yeah, which is relationship. Absolutely. Okay, anyone else before we launch in? You're all, at least you all agree with me. That might be a good sign.
Can I
Yeah,
say one more thing?
yeah, yeah.
I lived in Mexico in the Mexican community with the people for 10 winters of my life, and I saw so much joy and happiness in those families.
Yeah.
Yep, because they're living together, helping each other, cooking yummy food, breastfeeding them babies, playing outside in the sunshine.
Yeah, that's
Yep.
right. They don't advertise those pictures in the rat race, I can tell you that.
I was also going to say the two little brief, make my happiest moments in my life are when I went to Standing Rock and the 8 summers that I spent at my Airstream camp with my daughter when she was growing up. Those are the happiest and most fulfilled I've ever felt. And community was all about what both of those experiences were about and being in touch with the natural world. So,
Well, you can see why I can't do this with individual clients the same way I can do this with a group because just the energy of a group is just it's actually what's needed. All right, folks, maybe you know the rest of what I'm going to say, but I'm going to say it anyway. So here we go. I'm not sure why my okay, resume. So let me just see what's happening here. Oh, okay. For some reason, it won't let me. One sec. I'm trying something new here. Evidently, it's not working. All right, now I should be allowed to do it. So I want to share with you, in the work that I do, I work with energy levels, and if you end up working with me at some point, you're going to see them play out. But I'm going to kind of take you through six basically energetic strategies for trying to leave the rat race. One of them is the starving artist, right? Now, the starving artist is I'm just going to reduce my needs and actually reduce my worth ultimately, and I'm going to retreat from society. Then there's the rat race approach, which is basically I'm going to climb to the top and then I'm going to leave, right? I'm going to get everything out of it I can and then hit the trails. The Silicon Valley, the way I think about this one is like make a whole bunch of money really fast, and I wonder if any of you came up with it like this. A lot of people, this is how they're going to leave. They're like, well, I just got to figure out a way to make a whole bunch of money really fast, and then I got to get out, right? But then you've got the big mystery of how do I do that, right? Then we end up trying a bunch of things that might be questionable sometimes. But every once in a while, someone hits on it, right? They can make an app or whatever it is, and they make a whole bunch of money, and then they ditch the rat race. Then there's the Mother Teresa, what I call the Mother Teresa solution, which is really to leave out of service, right? To literally go out of the rat race and serve humanity. Then there's the regenerative solution. I feel like we were touching upon that. This is really about creating win-wins and synergizing with others. And then there's the Buddha solution, which is to just transcend it spiritually. Okay? And I'm not going to suggest that these are wrong or right, but they're just different ways to approach the puzzle of what do I do with this thing that I kind of like, I don't know how to work in it. I don't know how to deal with it. And there's a piece of all of these in what I'm going to talk about. But my question for you is to just take a minute and think about what have you tried? Which of these have you tried to leave the rat race?
I tried running Google ads because my coach made 5 million in 1 year doing affiliate marketing, and it didn't work as good for me as it did for her.
Yeah. Gotcha. Great. So that's the Silicon Valley version, right? Yeah. What else? What else have folks tried? You can just say it too, because I can't see all your hands. So if someone wants to say something, go for it.
Job and took a job with an orphanage I was gone for about 3 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
I made no money, hardly at all, but it worked out.
Yeah. The Mother Teresa solution. Yeah. I mean, there's so much beauty in it. Really, in some ways, there's so much beauty to all of these things, even the rat race, right? In context, talk about balance, right? In balance with all the other ones. What else? Anyone else try something?
I did the starving artist.
Uh-huh.
Cut all my needs.
Yeah.
It was hard. It was hard.
Hard. Yeah. Yeah. Anyone want to say something? I'm gonna go on.
Buddha solution. I did
Yeah?
the Buddha solution.
Which one was it?
The Buddha solution.
Yeah.
I moved to the Himalayas for 2+ years with my kids and meditated and homeschooled.
Wow.
I know. I love it. I love it. Yes, that is definitely the Buddha solution.
So Katie,
Yeah.
I'm wondering, having worked in the nonprofit arena my entire life, where would that fit? Because in my mind, working for a nonprofit is making the world a better place. And so which one of these would you put that into?
I'd probably put it in more at the level 4, the Mother Teresa solution.
Okay.
But it has a little bit of the starving artist in it too. But there is a trap door between level 4 and level 1, as we know from our energy levels. So that kind of fits. Yeah, I give. Bruce, when you were talking about going to the orphanage, I talked to someone else who, she went to Africa and was a nurse for 3 years and, came back like half her weight. And, I'm not saying it's wrong. It's not that you shouldn't do it. It's just that these are ways we're trying, right? There's just in our system, we're trying to figure out a way out of basically the box that we've been drawn into. Okay, so I want to share with
Oh,
you. Oh, sorry, did someone want to say something?
yeah, sorry, Katie, I had a
Go ahead, Bodie.
question.
Yeah.
So I'm in the rat race, right?
Huh.
But I also like to have win-win situations for people. So they're not in conflict, right? Are they? Or is one can
Well,
be folded into the other,
oh,
right?
what I'd say is the upper levels include and transcend the lower levels, or at least
Okay.
can, but they have them in the right, in kind of a healthy proportion.
Okay.
The win-win has to include you.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And win-win. Sure. A lot of entrepreneurs manage to do that. And you'll see it'll show up in my model. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I'll take you there, Tony. We're going there next because here's how I feel about it. I feel like we got to work at all the energy levels. Okay. I think sometimes we're trying to work at just one or the other, and that's not actually sufficient because what I'm interested in is not just getting you out of the rat race, but having you be able to stay out of the rat race, should you choose. Now, if you love the rat race, hang out. It's fine. This class isn't for people who want to stay in the rat race, but you're welcome to. Okay. Level one is to unhook from consumer culture, which means yes, reduce your needs because that helps you create a little more flexibility and choice. Okay. And then the spiritual warrior. And this is about cultivating inner strength and courage and having a really clear vision and mission. Okay. The warrior's gonna make things happen. Okay. And the warrior gets a bit of a bad rap because the warrior shows up as anger and rage sometimes. But in this particular case, or actually in the rat race culture, the rat race is that same, it's like the win-lose, right? But if you kind of help your warrior energy get to the place where strength, resilience, courage, right, having clear mission and vision, the warrior will actually work for you to do the thing you want. And then level three is I matter. Okay, so this is where it's important for us to find that place where our self-worth, we develop healthy self-esteem here. We see ourselves as kind of having resources and also as having a certain kind of resourcefulness. Okay, so this is that really strong anchor, what I would call kind of like a healthy ego. Okay, now the ego can run wild, of course, and at the lower energy levels, it certainly does. But there is a healthy ego that knows how to take care of myself. I am a body. I do need to be fed. I do need clothing. I do need, some kind of roof over my head. Okay, so have kind of a healthy ego. And then level four, others matter. And this is, what we were talking about. It's like collaboration. This is that village. This is caring for others. This is cultivating our generosity because we're creating a web, right? We're not just on a rat race trying to get the next nugget. No, we are creating a web of interconnection that's good for us, but also really supports others. Which brings us to design regeneratively. So this is that synergizing. And the way I actually see it is it's a win-win. It's a win for me, it's a win for the other person, and then it's a win for something else. So I think on my Out of the Rat Race course, I think it's a win for me because I love teaching it. It's like my life's work. Okay. It's a win for hopefully all of you because you're going to get something valuable out of it. It's hopefully then a bigger win because we're going to start to have an impact on a larger society. Okay. So I think of it as like the win-win plus a hidden win, one that we can't always see at the beginning. And then building a powerful relationship with my true self. So this is the spiritual component. This is actively working toward transcendence, and I actually do think it's very much a part of a sustainable, long-term consciousness evolution approach out of the rat race. And when this happens, the things that happen in the world around us, they just have a much lighter impact on us. Okay. So I'd like to ask you, where are you working now? Which one of these, and you can think about this a couple ways, and I'm going to give you a few minutes to really think about it. Like, where are you trying to begin to either, right, create some disconnection from consumer culture, work on your own sense of self-worth, work on collaboration, having this clear vision or courage? Like, which one of these is kind of where your edge is right now? So just take a moment to reflect, and then I'll have us come and share back in a minute. So let's just hear from a couple of people. Where are you working? Where's your edge with this at the moment? And you can just probably speak up because I want to keep the slide up just while we're talking. What do you got? Number two, Karen?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, do you want to say more about it?
Um, as some of you know, I left the rat race on medical sabbatical. And so now I feel like I fit level two, the spiritual warrior, because I am trying to cultivate strength, courage, and figure out a clear vision and mission for what is next.
Mhm.
So I feel like that's where I am at the moment.
Mhm. Great. Thank you. What about a couple other people want to share? Maybe looking. Yeah, go ahead.
Dancing.
Yeah.
Dancing between the spiritual warrior, the same thing. I'm out of the rat race, but really a little new babe in that. And so there's that little wobbly legs trying to stand up. And so trying to find the inner strength and really getting the clear vision and mission so I can evade the rat race and not go running back. And through that, part of that work is just increasing my understanding of resources and resourcefulness. And then but the actual work that I'm doing with outward work is collaborating and carrying forward with others. And I really love the cultivating our generosity aspect of that. That's gonna be a nice thing to mill about, to think about.
Good. Great. Thank you, Melanie. I think Shannon, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I just was gonna say, even with the last slide and with this slide, I think because I've worked for myself for 33 years. So I don't know. I almost can't even separate any of these things. I feel like I love seeing them um, in this format and seeing them separated because I'm such an organic whole systems thinker.
Uh,
To like see them separated, I'm like, oh yeah, I feel like I do all of these things, but trying to I think recognize where you are, leverage what you have to create the next piece, right?
mhm, mhm.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
I'll say I've got one down pat. I'm real good at that. I'd like to work more on two, and I just finished a book that was really inspiring. It was called Patriot, about this fellow Navalny who fought against Putin and was poisoned by, almost died, and then he was put in a prison. He actually ended up dying in the Russian prison, but he had in such incredible courage and strength,
Yeah.
and it was like, such a brave person standing up against this.
Yeah.
They really had to work really hard to wear him down.
Mhm.
And so I'd like to get that. I would love to be a tenth of what he is. And then go to number three, and I have a lot of work to do on self-worth, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So
It's interesting. Level one or level two and level three have a pretty strong relationship. The warrior really helps us get to a sense of self-worth. It is a bit of a journey. Yeah, it is a bit of a journey. Thank you, Joan. Anyone else before we head out to the next? Okay. All right. Well, we got some more to do here. So I want to, I just think it's important for people to know, of course, some of these ideas are my own, but they've all been born out of many of the kind of authors and mentors that I've had, and just a smattering of them, just so you know, some of the places this wisdom is coming from, because I'm about to show you kind of the roadmap that I created with some help, with some design help to help me kind of think through what actually happened when I left the rat race. You know, when I left the rat race, I had a friend leave with me. And I'll tell you what, it made all the difference because I think otherwise I'd have really struggled a lot more because it's somewhat disorienting. So these are some of the wonderful, authors and thought leaders that I've followed. There are many more, but just to give a smattering. So we're going to start here. This is the beginning of the design of the Out of the Rat Race model. And I want to start here because it kind of lets us have a little bit of a simpler view of it. What you see at the center over there is you see birth, okay? And you see the little eggs. And then they become a caterpillar, and the caterpillar begins to eat leaves, and then the caterpillar comes to adulthood, okay? Now, in my vision of things, in what happens in the rat race is that we don't actually mature into full adulthood. We pass by this moment that I call the dilemma, and we'll come back to that in a minute, where there's a choice, basically. And the choice is to continue to do the things that our culture tells us to do and so perpetuate the culture, or to make a choice to do something different, okay? To step into the chrysalis. And what you see between them is you have the opening, literally the opening of two worlds. And the two worlds, you'll notice that the second world is scaffolded on the kind of the original world, but it starts to spiral out. It becomes a greater mass, a greater dimension. But okay, in kind of my thinking, what happens if we don't do something metamorphose at some point is we work in the rat race our whole life, we get to retirement, we have that $1 million in the bank. Maybe we use it all before we die. Maybe we don't. Maybe we give it to our children, and then our children have, some money, or we give it to someone else. And it kind of the cycle just continues like a circle. Okay. And that I think is part of what reinforces actually the rat race is people kind of come into it and leave it not having undergone a transformation. And what's happening at the center, that kind of little scraggly line, is that's really the increasing consumption, right? The more we keep in this kind of circular loop, the more we consume. And if the caterpillar never transforms, we'd call it an incomplete metamorphosis. And I think about a lot of how we talk about humanity right now at this moment of adolescence. And it's not that adolescence is bad or wrong. It's a totally important, healthy part of our developmental process. It's just not complete. Okay. There's more to it. So again, what do you plan to do with your one wild and precious life, So here's where that ended up. And I want to walk through this model with you now. Okay. So we're going to start at the beginning. So you start right the birth, the caterpillar, the adult. One thing I want to say is there are multiple times when you can step out of the rat race. Okay, it's possible to step out of it right before you become an adult. I kind of let you. There's a little, two arrows meet. There was probably an exit there. There's an exit. What I think of as the next big exit is sometime in our working life. Definitely when we hit the what people call the midlife crisis is a time when it can emerge. And it's either a midlife crisis, which to me says you go back to the rat race, or it's a midlife awakening and you do something different. Okay. So what's happening, we're born, of course, we've got to figure out how to survive. I mean, that's job one as far as I'm concerned. And how to survive is several things. One of them is we actually build an emotional pattern for how we deal with the world. Okay, that's one of our survival strategies. Everyone leaves childhood with some pattern. It's awfully kind of screwy sometimes, but whatever, it kind of works, most of the time, and it'll get us through. And then we've got to figure out how to support our physical well-being, if nothing else, right? So that we physically survive. So I call that the survival dance, and of course it has shoes on it because the survival dance typically happens inside of the rat race. And it's interesting, this is from Harvey Swifty or Reagan, who Bill Plotkins is referencing. He talks about survival dance and soul dance. We'll get to soul dance in a minute. But when I think about survival dance, it makes me think of a story I heard once about monasteries where they accept monks, and they're like basically, but I don't even remember the line was this: basically, if you haven't made it in the real world, don't bother trying to come to the monastery. Okay, it's not a place to avoid the real world. Go make it in the real world, then come to the monastery, then you'll have something to offer. Okay, so this survival dance feels very real and important, and in no way do I want to denigrate it. Our survival, our species probably depends on it in some version or another. Okay, figuring that out. But inevitably, what happens, and I do believe it happens to every single person, and I am sure it happens multiple times, is you get a call. I don't know how many times in your life you've gotten a call. That's that little, "Ooh," you know. I sure wish I was doing that, or you'll get a little idea of that, right? Or someone is living some life somewhere, and there's some little back of the mind dream. The call is the seed of a dream. Okay. And when the call gets strong enough, it starts to intrude on, right, the model as is, let's say, and it creates what is a dilemma for us. And the dilemma is the place where we basically realize, we got to choose between two worlds or two realities. And one is a reality that we know, the one that's reinforced by our culture, the one that feels familiar, the one that has certain guarantees, or at least supposed guarantees or certainties in it. And this world that is kind of wild and uncharted and, somewhere off the edge of some cliff where we're not sure we want to jump. Okay. So you face the dilemma. You have multiple choices, but let's say the two extreme choices are to stay in the rat race or to leave. If you choose to leave the rat race, you pretty quickly cross over a threshold. Okay. As soon as you, like me, when I quit my full-time job and all of a sudden I have the summer off and I'm not actually going back to full-time work in the fall, right? It's like you cross a threshold. And what I have found, and I found this with all of my clients who do it, and I certainly did it, is you go into a little bit of a free fall because the structures that originally held you, and you know your place and you know what to do, that kind of fall away. And the free fall is kind of both exhilarating and really scary. Because you kind of don't know when you're going to land. You don't know if you're going to land, and you sure the heck don't know what you're going to land on because we're in a totally alternate reality right now. But in time, when your nervous system starts to regulate around it, you discover that in crossing the threshold, you've actually stepped into the chrysalis. And the chrysalis is a place where what's going to happen is the old you, along with the old world, is going to dissolve. And it does happen slowly over time, thankfully, because I think it would just jar the heck out of us if it didn't. But that begins this process where we start to step into a bit of metamorphosis. Okay, so now I just want to kind of draw your attention to the three kind of big statements that are at the bottom edge of this nautilus shape. There's the setting, the self, and the world. Okay. The first one, the setting, when you cross the threshold, you change your setting. You are no longer inside of the rat race. Okay, you are some different place, some place that you probably don't recognize. If all goes well, there are other people with you. Once you've changed the setting and you begin to undergo your metamorphosis process, you will in time change yourself, or actually you'll come in contact with who you really are. Okay, you will stop identifying with the old self and you will begin to identify what is kind of commonly known, and you can look at any tradition and modern therapeutic modalities, as true self. Okay. Once you have transformed yourself, somewhere in that process, there's an awakening and you begin to do your soul dance. Okay. Now, whatever your soul dance is, to me, that's like, it's mad. I'm not saying it's always one thing. For some people it is. It's really like, oh, I found the thing I want to do and that's what I'm going to do. That's fine. For a lot of us, it's an unfolding path that you can't necessarily see the end of. Okay, you have a general direction, but you don't see the end. And what I like to help people do is get from the call to true self. Basically, that's what I'm excited about. Like that's where I feel like I can help my clients. Okay, once that happens, in some ways you really don't need someone anymore. You've got actually the best guide and mentor and coach and therapist and partner you could ever want in true self. So that process though by which we go through the threshold, what happens, we start to break loyalties. We're breaking loyalties, cultural loyalties, but actually inevitably, of course, what happens is we end up breaking other loyalties as well. I don't mean that we ruin friendships. What I mean is we're literally breaking the rules that people thought were the rules by which you had to live. My father was a beautiful example of this. My father was a big countercultural guy. He had a very interesting life. We lived in Europe for part of our childhood, but boy, when I left the rat race, he was pretty scathing. It's on my websites. He's like, "Are you retiring? Like, you're only four." He was pretty down on me, and I was like, "No, I'm not retiring." I literally said to him, I want to enjoy this one wild and precious life that I have, and he just couldn't get it. So it's not to say the world doesn't necessarily understand what this means. They think we're cheating the system or they think we're, being lazy. It's something quite different that's going on that's a little hard to explain. And then the wall comes from Janet Hagberg's work. Basically, the wall is the ego. And breaking down the wall is breaking down both our individual ego and societal ego. And what happens as the wall breaks down is we get a glimpse of what's really possible. And what's really possible isn't about your job. It's about you and who you are. That's what's really possible. And your self coming forward in the world. Okay. All right. So that's a lot of chatting. I'm actually going to stop the share for a minute. Check in. Are y'all still alive? Everything all right on the other side? How you doing? I just gave you a big blast. Hopefully you can start to see kind of there's layers. Thank you, kind of around the model. Just before we go any further, any thoughts or questions or feelings? How is this landing for you? Just stunned.
I think that the breaking of the agreements and the threshold, it's a big one. It's really big. I mean, you talked about your own experience. And I know you a little. You're very independent, so your dad couldn't have been totally surprised. But a lot of people aren't that independent, and so that's a big thing probably that keeps them back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and people probably think it's even bigger than it actually, like, for example, what I'll say about breaking loyalty, it might sound like you're not friends with those people. It's not that. I still had a great relationship with my dad. It simply was, there was a part of how I was approaching my life he just couldn't understand anymore. And that was okay. This is where that kind of confidence in myself, that courage, that sense of who I am comes in and sustained me. Um, and I thought it was kind of funny that my dad, you know, who's the person who probably instigated this in me in the first place, didn't really get it. I run the risk of daunting you with the task ahead of you. And what I want to say is that there is no better adventure as far as I'm concerned. This is about, when they talk about awakening, it's about coming alive. This is about coming alive when we have all these zombie apocalypse, movies, which I don't watch because I'm too sensitive for that kind of stuff. But it's like the zombie apocalypse out there, everyone, and we gotta come on, let's wake up. We can't all be, in our little cubicles, because I think the world's calling us. And I'm wondering how many of you experience having been called, whether you answered it or not. Okay, I get it. I know I was called for sure. Anyone experience being called? You got a little picture of what might be possible. You started wondering, maybe that would be a thing, but you didn't do it or you did do it. Who's had it? Okay. Like it or not, if you're on this call right now, you got the call. So I already know you got the call. Thanks, Arnold, for the thumbs up. The snowing upward thumbs up. Yeah, it's something to get the call and then know what to do with it. Because sometimes the call can have this like urgency where you're like, it seems like you have to change everything right away, but you don't have to. I just did this course with a friend of mine in the UK. We called it Negotiations at the Wild Edge. And all I want to say is you have more say than you think in how fast the change happens. And that's part of this designing the ramp is for you to get a little bit back in control of how you do this and how you lay this out to not the universe is kind of like rattling and calling and showing you these pretty pictures and getting you all excited. And then your nervous system is just typically just says, no, I'm too afraid. That's too wild or crazy. And all I'm saying is you can take as long as you want to answer the call. Okay. It's just that the call is the call of your higher self. So it's always going to be there. And the trick is to get over the fear that we have to step toward it. Now, I'm going to tell you something. I was telling Shannon this the other day. Of course, I teach this stuff. I believe it. I do it all the time. I got a pretty regulated nervous system. My little parts are pretty happy inside with what Katie's managed to do in her 52 years. And nevertheless, I was paralyzed at the thought of advertising this class. Absolutely paralyzed. And I'm telling you, I very nearly didn't do it. Every time I was going to post it on some, like whatever the permaculture Facebook page or the Twin City or the Minnesota Eco Village page, or even send it out to my clients, I just had this like, and the feeling wasn't, I don't think it's a great class. No, I think it's an amazing class. And it wasn't that I think I'm the wrong person or I'm a fraud. I didn't have any of that. It was just literally almost the most precious thing I could ever imagine putting out in the world. And I was so afraid of putting it out and screwing it up. And I'm telling you what, session after session, my mentor, I was like, I can't do it. I don't know how I'm going to do it. And we got there. Okay, so this kind of putting things out in the world, this moving into this new way of being, this, trying to trust something bigger than ourselves, it doesn't go away. What happens is we are putting more and more precious to us things out in the world. That's what happens in this process. Okay. And we all know this with our children. Like it's very difficult to let a child go off to college, as I found out, because it's like your heart out in the world. Okay. But when you're doing this moving out of the rat race and finding a new way to step into the world with the thing you have to offer, it's like that feeling. Okay. So a regulated nervous system, super important in this process. And if you don't have one at the beginning, you will get one because there's no way around it as far as I'm concerned. Okay. Because you're kind of writing the script as you go. You're not in some old script. Okay. All right. Now, I'm going to keep going in a moment, but I just want to check. Anyone else want to say something before I hop into kind of our last little pieces? I got to
I
get
think for me, it's like listening to and figuring out my true self.
Yeah.
Because if I find my true self and listen to that calling, it's hard to listen to it. But if I can listen to it and trust it, then I can go. But it is scary.
That's right. It's what's interesting too is like first of all, true self never imposes. So it's like if the parts are up there, oh no, you can't. The parts are like I had a part who was just like a horse like this with it. It was like that part was in charge of my system. And true self does not impose. True self's very patient and very generous. And the trick is, will our parts settle enough to let something new come in? Okay, I got to tell you one other story now that you said that one. Okay, this one's so silly. I'm not sure I can quite just like do this story justice, but in the midst of all of this, out of the rat race, getting the course up, I do this periodically. I went in and I checked in with my parts, and I've got a very active inner world. It used to be like carnage inside. It used to be a really, really scary place inside because I'm very emotionally intense. But I went inside and I was like, okay, how are we doing with all this? You know, putting our baby out there, and I tell you what, it was so funny. The parts were just lying back, just like they're like, hey man, like this is way above my pay grade. Good luck. They're like, we know we can't help you, and you'll probably figure something out if if it doesn't work out. But, and so that's where you get to, or at some point, and because they were like, yeah, I know what to tell you. Definitely, my true self knows better than all my parts. And to get there, I think is this journey. So when I talk about out of the rat race, kind of three big things to me. One part, it is learning how to dream again. And we have forgotten how to dream because we're just dreaming inside the rat race. And there's not that many choices in there, you guys. The other is we got to plan well. Okay. And I think that's the other thing. People kind of like, oh, well, I'll just like exit and everything will be rosy and happy. No, 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 no. There's an intelligent design here around how to plan. And the third is you're basically embarking on the great spiritual quest of your lifetime. That's what this is. You leave the rat race, and it's the potential for you to become all the things that you wanted to be. So you're lying on your deathbed and you're saying, damn, what a great ride I had. I'm glad I didn't just like stick to the status quo. That's what happens. Okay. All right. I'm sure I've got more to tell you here. Let me just take a peek what that is. Oh, okay. Okay. For some reason, I did the same thing that I did last time. Folks, I haven't worked it out yet. I'm not sure why. Okay. Take two. Okay, so we talked a little about this, the call and the dilemma, and this is where you get a little French verb study. I I was in southern France just a week or two ago, but actually it was a couple months ago when I saw this. And I'm doing this new therapy. I'm learning. I'm getting some new therapy from this woman who does something called heptonomy. Anyways, it's a long story. She's pretty amazing. And there are these volumes of books. Everything's in French, and I can speak. My French is all right, but then she showed me these three French words, kind of in succession. I was like, whoa! One was vouloir, which means to want or to want to. The next was devoir, which is to be able to. And the last is oser, which is to dare to. And I was like, whoa, what is this? And what I realized is basically this is the process. Okay. First, there has to be the desire to leave the rat race. If you don't have it, it's totally fine. Okay. But if you've got it, that starts a process. Then you're like, well, maybe I want to, but I don't know how to. Okay. To be able to. Super important. So then you get all your pieces in place. This is like me, when I took my picture of my little view when I was on the Spanish coast, and I wrote my little save the date for the out of the rat race, and then I just sat on it. Had everything ready, accessed all the I was just like, I just could not bring myself to it. There had to be a place where I was willing to dare to. So I want to just share with you some of the components of each of these that I think are part of this adventure of a lifetime. And I really do think getting out of the rat race is like, well, it's one of the most exciting things you're ever going to do, for sure. So one is the vouloir. The desire is you got to have a clear vision. You're going to have some adventure, some spirit, because I really think this is like the great stories of our time. I often think of Lord of the Rings, and some companionship on the journey. To be able to, so that's like, yes, then I want to. Great, 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 right? Oh, it's going to be fun. It's going to be so wonderful. Sure, right? But then like to be able to, I need a really good plan. Okay. I need a good backpack with the essential resources. And I really think you need with the capacity to regulate your nervous system, because you're going to get shaken a little bit here. You're going to be brought to your edge, because the edge is where we discover who we really are. Okay. We stay in the middle of the rat race. We discover what the rat race wants us to be. And then to dare to do it, I like to have some backup plans because things do happen to go awry on adventures. So I don't feel bad about that. Sometimes, yeah, we can't predict. It's emergent and unfolding. We have a great plan, but we can't plan everything. The universe is still in charge. So some backup plans, definitely some self-confidence, courage, and trust. And then I like to think too, some stops along the path. There are some, leaving the rat race we can just recreate it if we don't build in times for pause and reflection. Okay, so what I'd ask you here is which of these do you have and which do you still need? So just take a minute and which of these do you have and which of them do you still need? And I'm probably just going to pick a few people if you don't mind. I'd love to hear some voices. I know some of you are being quiet, but I'm just so curious. What do you have? What do you still need? And what if you had it would make all the difference? Tutu, tell me. She knew I was looking at her. She could totally tell.
I think I think I have a little bit of everything, but I also lack a little bit about everything. So I was thinking about like people are thinking, what do you really want? And then I almost feel like what I'm doing right now is what I want. Like at least, the stuff I'm doing right now. So I know like earlier you were saying your dream was to, study Montessori, get the certificate and open your own school. And then you didn't, but I did. So I sort of feel like that that was like my dream. And then I'm working towards to making it happen. And it did happen, but it's not as awesome as I want it to be. Like I feel like I just created a rat race by doing this for myself.
That's
and
right.
which is like what you're just saying, you got to learn how to stop in the middle of the way. And that's what I don't know how. And that's a really big thing. I feel like I had all the, self-confidence and courage and the blind courage and everything that you call it. And then I dived right in. But I didn't know how to stop. So I kind of like really stretched myself then and then did a lot of the things that I'm not supposed to, which, at one point I feel like I lost myself, that I matter stage was completely out of the window. Like I never at one moment I feel like I matter. Even like my family don't even matter,
That's right.
So I feel like now I do understand, like, this is a journey. Like you need to figure out how to actually write it in a way that would make this your beautiful life, other than creating another rat race for you. And then to be able to do certain things, I feel like I really lack the capacity of regulating my nerve system, because now I'm really feeling the stress, and every time things happen, like, oh my God, it's happening again. Like my favorite thing in this world now has become, a really like spoiled like how do you call that? Like what do you call that? Spoiled bowl of soup or something? Like
I think we get what you're saying.
hey, yeah, whatever that is in English. So I guess really I can see like a little bit of everything that I got over here, but like in every step I'm lacking something that's like sort of ending up making this rat race for me.
That's right. And don't forget to that, my first dream was a Montessori teacher, and then I had other dreams afterwards. So sometimes we get to something, we achieve it, and there are other things calling us too. So that it can also be part of this, our dream can evolve and change over time, and then we get a new call. All right. Let's see. Anyone else? How about Lourdes? Lourdes, what about you for? What do you
Yeah,
have?
I knew it's my
I was
turn.
totally looking at her. She knew. Like, how can you tell?
No, I knew I felt it even before. So I have lots of plans and ideas, and I've only like made one big idea true, which is allowing me to I have the beginning of the ramp.
Mm-hmm.
And I have lots of ideas. Like I can see them, I can plan them. I have sketches of the things I want to do. I do not have a plan. I do not have a plan on how to make them concrete. And I'm working on a regulated nervous system. But I think part of this plan is that I need a community of people. I can't do the things I want just by myself. And either if I hire them or make partnerships, but I don't have a plan. Do I have a dare? I do. I have taken leaps in my life, and it's okay. I'll be fine. Yeah.
Thank you, Lourdes. All right. Well, thanks. I think I gotta watch the time. It's a little hard to even keep track of time here on this. Oh my gosh, you guys, we're close to the end. All right, let me take you through the last few here. So I want to share some numbers games with you, because I really use these all the time. And one of them is the 80-20 rule. 80-20 rule is, what's the 20% I've got to put in to meet the universe's 80%? I really do believe that we are asked to take some step. I believe in a participatory experience. I don't think I can sit back and this magical life's going to unfold for me. I really feel like we're asked to engage. In the course I talk about, it's like a tango dance with the universe. So what's my 20%? That's when I'm pretty busy figuring out most of the time. And, wondering, is this my 20% or am I trying to like control things and be in the universe's 80%? I'm not sure. That's a little bit more Katie's problem. And then there's a 1% rule. And the 1% rule to me is that if you turn toward, or if any of us turn toward discomfort, but 1%, the universe will meet you with 99% support. But you've got to take the first step toward the thing that's uncomfortable for you. Okay. And often this is where we don't. This is the daring to be uncomfortable, right? Or sometimes it's the daring to even plan, So these are ones I live by. It's something for you to think about. What's your 20% to meet the universe's 80%? And what's the 1% discomfort you need to turn toward to open up the floodgates of that 99% of the universe's support? And I might be off by a percent or two, by the way. I'm not telling you, can't take it to the bank, but these work pretty well for me. Brittany, did you have something you want to say?
Yeah. Can you just, what is that 20%? What's my 20% to meet the universe? What does that mean exactly?
Yeah. So for example, if I had never made a flyer, if I had never looked around for places to post this, I'm sorry, you were not all going to magically materialize out of nowhere. Okay. That's my effort toward my dream. And that's my active participation. My tendency is try to control everything. That's too much. Okay. About 20%, and then you'll see the universe start stepping towards you, you know?
Okay.
But you got to do the 20%, and you got to try not to do the 80%. Okay.
Right.
Because it's
Okay.
this unfolding. Does that make sense? More sense, Brittany?
Yep.
Yeah.
Katie,
Yeah.
can you give an example of the 1% rule?
Oh, yes, I can. Oh, yes.
Thank you.
I'll take just right off this. I just didn't want to post this anywhere. I just didn't want to post it. And I remember I had it uploaded onto one of the Facebook pages. I don't even remember. And I just sat there with it uploaded without pushing the button because I just literally it's the silliest thing. I was just full of anxiety. And pushing the button, even though I was afraid, was the 1%. Yeah. Yeah.
Katie, I got another question about the 2080.
Uh-huh.
So is this actually telling us not to do the 80%? Like when people are saying, okay, I'm giving my 100%, like we're always thinking we got to do our best, we're giving our 100%. Are you saying we need
Give
to
your
be more
100%
resilient
in
and
your
not to
20.
give your 100%?
Yeah, yeah. So what I'm saying here is give your 100% inside your 20%, but remember that it's not all. In other words, what I'll try to do, this is my pattern here will be I'll just try to control absolutely everything. Lay everything out, have everything, down to the second, not leave like if I'd have done this way, I would have had a script and every word and I would have timed it and no. Do your 20% of planning. Okay. Europe. Let me do Europe. Oh gosh, this is a great story. I don't know if I have time for this story. All right, let me tell you in brief. I went to Europe last fall. And I went to Europe, and again, I got these messages, and the message was, well, Shannon gave me one. Shannon told me I was supposed to go to Scotland, so I did. Then I was told, don't book anything. Book your three first days, but then you don't get to book anything. And then I had like a week free where I didn't know what that was doing. I didn't know anyone. I didn't know where I was going. And then I had an Airbnb in the southern part of UK. And so that would be a good example. I booked what I felt comfortable booking, and I left the rest open, and I just kind of trusted. And what happened? You can't even believe it. You guys, you can't even believe what happened. But I literally was swept up into a whole community, taken to an eco retreat center with a raging waterfall, and they're going to buy the eco retreat. Then they're inviting me to their house. Then they're inviting me to the next. I mean, it was just ridiculous. That whole week that I had nothing planned. And in fact, I thought I was going to be all alone in England. No, I basically, after the first 3 days, I was pretty much with people the rest of the 3 weeks. I didn't know a soul when I went. So, in other words, if you try to control everything, you don't leave space for the unfolding. And that 20% was me listening to when it felt right to book stuff and when I just need to step back and let some magic happen. And it's taken me a while to get here, okay? I was doing the 80%, 20% in the inverse before. So, all right. Now, one more slide, I think. Oh, come on. There we go. I'm just going to share with you again my basic ramp, okay? First thing I did is I got to get clear on the financials. And the financials, I had to get clear on how I had been living, what I was spending, what I needed right now, what I could let go of, and what I was going to need in the future. And the financials included both the the 3D world, like literally money in my bank account and all that business, and also how I was feeling and feeling about and approaching money. I had to work on that kind of relationship with money, because if we don't see the rat race is built on it. And I don't entirely understand why, but it is kind of convenient, and it's a helpful tool. But we're obsessed with it in the rat race. One of the other things I would say to you is if I had to pay for the trip that I just took to Europe, let's just do the last 6 weeks. I calculated it. I think it would have cost me about $9,000 or $10,000. Now, and people ask me, are you just like rich, Katie? You're just like traipsing around Europe, visiting all these people? No, because I didn't pay for a single hotel the whole time I was there. I just stayed with friends for 6 weeks. So that makes a trip like that financially feasible, but I didn't have $10,000 sitting in the bank waiting for me to go to Europe, okay? It was about relationships. And of course there was some money, but actually it wasn't much more than I would have spent here. Okay, so there's a lot of creativity here in the financials, but we gotta get clear on the part of the financials that aren't negotiable. Kids, the house, I got to pay for the house and rent and all that business. And then the parts of it where we can be more creative. Okay, so clarity about my financials was the first thing. Then I leveraged my survival dance. So I did Montessori consulting. That was the first thing I did when I stepped out. And I leveraged that to begin to bridge with my survival and my soul dance. And that's when I took the training for the coaching. And then I married these 3 skills I have. And that is one of the great techniques. It's you marry 3 things you're good at. Mine was Montessori, leadership, and coaching. And then I scaffolded to my soul dance. I did emotional healing coaching and couples coaching. And now here I am at Out of the Rat Race and beyond, because I'm sure I'm not done. Okay, so I know we're tight on time, but I just encourage you, just take a minute to think about where you are in your process of building the ramp out. Okay. Okay. So I'm going to just get us here. I just want to say one last thing, that everyone's ramp is unique. I guess the thing about this Out of the Rat Race is I tell people, listen, I'm not like going to tell you what to do. We're going to design around what you need. Okay, and that can be very different. A single woman is different than a family, different than, someone who's caring for an elderly parent. Everyone's ramp is unique based on their unique situation. So I'll just read a little piece of this. Jay, who was going to join us tonight, unfortunately was sick, shared this with me. I'll read the first 2 and then the last verses. So in out of the way places of the heart, where your thoughts never think to wander, this beginning has been quietly forming, waiting until you were ready to emerge. For a long time, it has watched your desire, feeling the emptiness growing inside of you, noticing how you willed yourself on, still unable to leave what you had outgrown. ... Though your destination is not clear, you can trust the promise of this opening. Unfurl yourself into the grace of beginning that is one with your life's desire. Awaken your spirit to adventure. Hold nothing back. Learn to find ease in risk. Soon you will be home in a new rhythm, for your soul senses the world that awaits you.